Independent Film Forum is coming to you from the Studio 809 Community Podcast Studio at the Next Us, a professional cooperative environment for small businesses in downtown Colorado Springs. So I'd like to welcome our guest for today's podcast, Mr. Ron Chaney, all the way from California.
All right. Hello, everyone. How are you?
Ron, so just to start this off, we met last year because we did a tribute to your family at our 3 Nights of Horror last year, because in case people didn't understand or recognize that your last name is Chaney, that your great-grandfather is the one and only Lon Chaney Sr., the man of 1,000 faces.
That's correct. Yes, indeed.
And who was born in Colorado Springs, which is where our festival is. And I had hoped that I was going to be able to reach you, and I did, and we were able to connect, and you were able to come out to our festival last year. Very, very thankful for that.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about what some of the things that we talked about your family and your family legacy. Is that I had brought up the fact that you and your family are part of Hollywood royalty. And how does that make you feel?
I'm pretty proud, I'd have to say. I really didn't grow up a lot involved in it at all. But, it was funny because my grandfather, Lon Chaney Jr., of course, I called him Gramps. Uh, I didn't think he was all that busy doing, I thought he was pretty retired. But then as I looked later at and studying his career, how much he continued to work when I thought he wasn't doing, he was doing more cameos, smaller bits, things of that nature. I would see them in books, magazines. So yeah, you're always aware of it, but it's pretty cool, that you can say your grandfather is the Wolfman, your great grandfather is the Phantom of the Opera, no doubt.
Oh,
Very proud.
definitely, definitely. And so many people know your grandfather, Lon Chaney Jr., from the horror classics like The Wolfman and working with Universal Pictures. But his career started way before that. In fact, you and I talked about one of my favorite films that he's in is Of Mice and Men, and he plays
Mhm.
Lenny, really basically initiating that. Of all the versions of that film, I think that that version with Burgess Meredith is the best.
I couldn't agree more. I think it was a pinnacle role for him. It launched him out of his father's shadow, and they started looking at it as not the son of a great actor, but an actor himself that can do great things. So I think that was definitely a breakthrough role, and probably what led to his being signed by Universal to come over to that studio.
You're doing a lot to keep the family legacy alive. Let's talk a little bit about some of the projects you've been working on to keep the Chaney family alive and well in today's Hollywood perspective.
Well, I always thought when I would took this mantle on, I would say, I formed the company. It was Chaney Enterprises in the beginning, but I knew my vision was really more in the entertainment. Enterprise seemed I could go in a lot of different directions. So I changed to Chaney Entertainment very early on, with always aspirations of doing other projects, knowing that although an amazing legacy, each generation passing, there's fewer and fewer the fans that are in love with the classics. Thanks goodness of the horror genre, bless them. They've really helped to keep the legacy alive. And my grandfathers, along with Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi, are the grandfathers of an entire industry. And Lon Chaney sits at the pinnacle. So everything kind of comes out of that. So I felt using those themes, because I love them, and they're very classic, and that's why they've endured all these generations. Is to take those themes and create new projects out of them. So not only honoring my family, but recreating in my them. No, I'll never be them. I know that right now, but I will do my best, and I'm versatile in a lot of areas. So it took me into numerous different directions as I've been doing this the last 30 years. I looked at doing haunted houses, doing a huge Halloween attraction. Uh, I started doing musicals. I did a couple of, well, similar like we did in Colorado, when your pianist, who was so marvelous, played the score to The Phantom. I've done that as well, playing the original score with the violinist and also with the full orchestra. And then I had a partner contact me, or became a partner, about doing a stage musical. Well, I thought, well, I don't know. I thought about it, but perhaps more in a dramatic role. I said a musical, but right at that particular time, I was really thick into research on the family because I'm working to complete this book my grandfather started titled A Century of Cheneys. And I was uncovering all of his stage career. And he was doing musical comedy up on stage, and then he transitioned over a film course later. So there were so many similarities, and he truly loved the stage. And probably thought he was never going to leave it, and some unfortunate incidents caused him to go into film. So well, we've got a stage production. I got a book. I've written a couple of scripts now that are being made into graphic novels. The film you're going to do, going to show at the festival, is I produced and acted in that. And a friend of mine came to me. We partnered in on it, and we shot it 3 days. It's a short. I hope everybody likes it, but it was a lot of fun. And it merged two things that I love, Westerns and horror. So I thought it was kind of different and unique. So that piqued my interest, and we did it. And we're looking at doing another one now.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that since you'll be at our Colorado Short Circuit Film Festival in September of 2024. You are one of our featured filmmakers and special guests. Let's talk about your short film, The Devil's Den. Um, like you said, it's a Western, it's also horror, so it merges two genres. So you're kind of continuing in the legacy of your family.
I hope so. I mean, that's kind of the spins on all my projects have to do it with part of the family legacy, whether it's recreating an original to the era it was done, like my music productions, and or converting it into new music, like the stage play.
Well, let's take a quick look at the trailer for Devil's Den, which will be featured at Colorado Short Circuit Film Festival.
Now look, kid. These cowboys ain't like regular fellas. They don't function like us.
Pete, I shot you dead 6 weeks ago. How many of them things are there?
You want to stay alive? You aim. We got work to do.
And we're back, and that really looks like an interesting, fun film. Tell me a little bit about making that film. What was some of the things that you had to create besides, well, let's look at the makeup effect for the zombies.
Mhm. Well, we had David Woodruff, who directed it and wrote it with his father, who's also a very well-known makeup artist, Tom Woodruff. I did a couple of small shows with him, or just kind of like still shoots. He had done one with Sarah Carla Boris's daughter. They recreated this whole Frankenstein thing, and it was really cool. Just pictures. They went out to the original site and photographed. And then he asked me to do the Wolfman one. So I came in. I kind of played a Sir John role. I had the cane, and I came dressed like that. We got some great photos. We had a beautiful gal Kayla that played a Gwen Conliffe role, and we took stills. It turned out great. And in all of this getting to know each other, we were telling our own stories of all our aspirations that didn't always go like planned. And I was telling him, yeah, I love Western horrors. And here's a little thing I was kind of working on. He goes, oh, well, we wrote a short. I go, really? What's it about? And he told me a little bit about it. And I go, I like it. How much do you think it's going to cost to make it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to play the role if I could. I go, I know I don't have a whole lot of experience. And I think David said, well, we're trying to get Ron Perlman. I go, well, you know what? I'll step aside for Ron Perlman. So obviously we couldn't get him. And I said, yeah, I'd like to do it. This is right up my alley. I have a horse. I ride. I like Westerns, and it was fun. So that was the genesis of the start. And from there, I think we were talking in December of 22 about it. And when I said, let's do it, he went to work, and he knows a lot of people from the industry, and Andy Schonenberg, who did the zombie makeup, and David
Mm.
worked with him putting that together. He got a wonderful, it was a very short cast and small crew. So, it made it feasible financially, even though it was still expensive because I live in California. But everything's expensive out here. But I really wanted to, get more experience on producing things of that nature in film. And the best way you can do that is go out and do it. And since I'm not union, I don't live in LA, I find that if I don't take the initiative and do it myself and put my own abilities, money, and talents on the line, then I can't prove to anybody else that I'm worthy of hopefully asking for money on bigger projects. That I'll prove myself.
Well, hopefully we could convince you to come out to Colorado to make some films too.
We discussed that.
We
I'm
did.
ready
Well,
to come in, so you
you will
never
be
know.
among so many filmmakers when you come out in September, so you never know. You never know. The connections are there, the networking is there.
No, and it's the perfect scenario for the next one I want to do. We're looking to shoot a teaser next month, just limited to give people an idea. It's one of the ones my scripts is being made into a graphic novel. But my hope was always to make the film. But it's a werewolf film, and
Of course, right?
honestly, forest, mountains, Colorado fits all the bills.
Perfect. Well, let's talk about some of the literary works that you are working on. You said a book about your family. Was that started by your grandfather, Lon Jr., or okay.
Yeah. In the latter stages of his life, his health wasn't very good. He wasn't out. He'd do cameos, but for the most part, I think he turned to the creative side that he had. I mean, he'd been around the entertainment since he was born, literally since he was born.
Yeah.
So all of that experience, I think he just thought, very similarly, I'll just do my own. So he started writing some scripts. He developed some children's tales, a television series he was going to host, and then he started on a book. Was his primary project called A Century of Cheneys, and basically, A Century of Cheneys is about 100 years of entertainment collectively by his father, his father both on stage and
Hmm.
screen, his mother on stage, and his own career, both
Yeah.
stage and screen. So
Mhm.
collectively, that was what 100 years. And he announced it on Johnny Carson in
Mhm.
1969. When we go visit him, I remember him working on the book. He'd have pictures. It was a picture meant to be a picture book with
Yeah.
short stories, short anecdotes, kind of fun, kind of entertaining, hopefully answering questions people had. That was kind of what he said in his foreword. And and he had other actors and fellow actors and friends that made comments. So I had some comments from Broderick Crawford and Joan Crawford, Robert Mitchum, Bob Hope, and a few others. So they're going to add their comments in, and then I've kind of, he was ill and he didn't have access to information that's available now today. Even when I first started on these things, I had to go to libraries and mimeograph or go really searching
Yeah.
deep. But with today's technology and a lot of newspapers coming online, there's a lot of information if you know where you're looking. And it's really opened up a lot. My grandfather, he shopped it, but the publishers thought, you need to write more, you need to have more information, and I think he was sick and he just never finished it. So when we moved, my grandmother, my brother and I, we went into the garage and we found two cardboard boxes that said, Chaney book on it, and I'm like,
Wow.
oh my God, this is what Gramps was working on so many years ago. Wow, I remember this. And I remember it was like finding a treasure. Because for me personally, when I opened it up and I saw all these little wonderful stories and wonderful photographs, it was like, okay, Ron, what are you going to do with your life? You've always wanted to pursue the entertainment side of your family.
Mhm.
You're contracting. How do you make that jump? So it took me a long time, but I had a goal. And the goal was when I opened that book up, it kind of called to me, but I also knew it was meant to be a film. I don't know what drove me to think that. So as I've developed the book, I've kind of been using it somewhat. I won't say it's storyboarding, but a lot of it is following chronologically via pictures and era and time, their lives, you know. And I think it's amazing what they did, uh, what they accomplished, what they went through, the hard times. This book is not about all the great, wonderful. I mean, their hard work and perseverance led to those accolades that they had, and their life's experience and knowledge, I think, all contributed. And I hope I bring that to the table, and also inspiration for people uh, to go beyond what you think you can do, because both of them should have quit, and probably due to the Colorado Springs connection with the School of the Deaf. They watched their grandparents and their mom and their dad overcome a handicap that was inspiration to them
Mm.
to do something different. And I think that's what makes them very unique, especially with Lon Chaney. And Lon Chaney Jr. did very similar in some of his movies. He used sign too. He was very adept at it. People don't know that. They always think of Lon Sr., but he used it, you know, he knew how to express emotion, and he could do it flawlessly, both of them.
Yeah, I mean, many people don't know about your great grandfather's um, early years here in Colorado Springs, but his parents, was it his parents that were deaf?
Both of his parents were deaf mutes,
And
yes.
then they had helped to begin to start the Colorado
Oh,
Springs School for
no,
the Deaf and
his
Blind.
grandparents,
Oh, his grandparents. Okay.
his mother's parents were the Kennedys, and they, Jonathan and Mary,
Right.
formed first schools for the deaf in Kansas
Mhm.
and in Colorado Springs in the 1860s and
Right. They
1870s.
always skip a generation in your family because it goes back so far. But yeah, I mean, that is such a big part of Colorado Springs history. And the School for the Deaf and Blind celebrated an iconic year this year.
Indeed. Was it
So
125 years, right? No, 150 years.
yeah, 150 years.
150 years. I kicked myself for not being getting back there, but I just had too much going on, and
Well, you'll
I
be
think I
able to share
contributed
some.
a few photos to help, but I hope we make up for it sometime in the future.
Well, you'll be able to share some stories with Jamie Hastings, who's also one of our featured filmmakers, and of course, she's a huge part of the Colorado Springs School for the Deaf and Blind. She works there,
All right. Yes,
so we'll be
she's
able to do that. You mentioned just briefly about graphic novel. Tell me a little bit about that.
well, I had a screenplay come my way. It was a little bit off. I liked the premise of it, and I developed it into more of a like a Western horror. So you can go see again. I love these two genres, but also it starts off in the Civil War, so there's that theme throughout. And I really liked it. We did some test makeups on it. I intended, I didn't have a lot of knowledge, but I continued to work on it. And when I was back in Michigan to premiere our play 2 years ago, I ran across a friend who would do some licensing with us. But what captured me the mostly through this little, I call them comic books. I know the graphic novels get a little bit bigger, but it was really well done. The art was really wonderful. I said, hey, I really like it. I've written a couple of scripts many years ago, and I didn't really have the money to produce them. I tried, but I still have them. And he goes, well, what are they? And I said, well, I did this Western horror, and I also did a sequel to The Wolf Man, as I see it. And he said, the Wolf Man, really? You did something with the Wolf Man? Obviously, my grandfather being the Wolf Man. I go, yeah. It kind of came to me, all kind of the concept came to me at one point, and then I've just been developing it ever since. And then I also had more recently, because of the demand to want to know what a lost film was of my great grandfather called London After Midnight. All the copies apparently have disappeared. It's a highly coveted film. Everybody keeps hoping it's going to pop up someday. But Lon Chaney's creation as this vampire in this silent film was pretty iconic, and people have never seen it, so they don't know what it is. And I thought, well, wait a second. Why don't we recreate it? I have all the information. I've got the working script, the shooting script. I've got So what I started doing, because I needed to make it somewhat different and bring it up to date, but still leave the originality in it, was I took all of the original scenes and then I read the graphic novel, and there was a lot that, when films were big enough, they would hire writers at the studios to kind of adapt the story. And I really liked some aspects of it that weren't in the overall story, because it was originally by Todd Browning. And I just started playing with it, and I used elements, and then I was writing new stuff to bridge them together, because they weren't meant to. But in leaving all the original scenes, the idea was to then extract the original scenes, convert it back to black and white, drop title cards, and I have the original music from London After Midnight. So I know the length of it, I know how it's supposed to be shot, and recreate the original so everybody could see it. And then at the same time, I would have a new movie with all the new scenes and new score and dialogue and color that would hopefully appeal to a newer audience. And people think it was a horror, but it was really a mystery drama. And Lon played 3 roles in that particular film. So yeah, we were moving along, but apparently there was some possible copyright, and I was going to crowdfund. So I started making products like this one, and just kind of experiment. I had a great group of people I was working with in New York, and I just wasn't sure if it was completely clear, so I just held off. I think it's different enough, but I can't take people's money or even ask for it if I know that I have any hesitation in shooting it. So it all fell in public domain this year, so it's all good to go. And the guys saw that, and they're fans of the family and the genre, and they said, well, we want to start with 2. We want to make them all graphic novels, but we'd really like to start with 2 that are really identifiable to the Chaney legacy, and that was Curse of the Wolfman and London After Midnight. So yeah, I hope so. I mean, that's what I want to do. My book is very important, and film I love, so it just seems like anytime that comes calling, I get distracted and I go that direction. It is truly where I want to go, and I'm hoping that the book is the emphasis and basis of the story and film and script on Lon Chaney.
I can't wait. As you know, we've talked about that. I am such a huge fan of your family. I did so much research on your great-grandfather, Lon Chaney Sr. We have the Lon Chaney Theater here in town that hopefully will still be in existence in the future.
Better be. I mean, I'm here if they need anything.
I know. So I can't wait to see all this come to fruition. So I want to say thank you for being part of our podcast, and we look forward to seeing you in September.
I'm looking forward to coming and seeing you again and meeting all the filmmakers out there. I'm very excited about that. And thank you for having me at the film festival. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Independent Film Forum. If you want to be in the know and be a good community citizen, check out Studio809podcasts.com to find many other community podcasts in the Studio 809 podcast family.